Chosen ones, listen carefully. There is a pattern you begin to recognize when you walk with God long enough. Major shifts are rarely sudden. Before heaven moves in a visible way, there is usually a whisper. Before doors close or open, there is often a quiet nudge. Before elevation, there is alignment. What you are sensing right now is not random emotion. It is not coincidence. It is not just another video passing through your feed. If you are here in this moment, breathe for a second. Slow down. This is not content to consume quickly. This is direction to consider carefully. Sometimes we scroll so fast that we miss the very thing meant to protect us. So before you do anything else, pause. Let your shoulders relax. Let your thoughts settle. Ask yourself honestly, why does this feel personal? Because it is. What you are experiencing is not hype. It is not spiritual drama. It is not fear-based messaging. It is guidance. And guidance only comes when someone cares enough to intervene. Before we go deeper, I want you to participate, not just watch. If something inside you recognizes truth in these words, acknowledge it. Let your response be intentional. Stay connected to what God is unfolding in your life. And in the comments, share where you are listening from. Not for numbers, not for visibility, but as a testimony that discernment is awakening across cities, across nations, across continents. God is not speaking to one location. He is stirring hearts everywhere. And to those who choose to support this mission in any way, through prayer, through encouragement, through giving, understand something clearly. You are not just helping a channel. You are participating in an assignment. When you invest in spreading truth, you are aligning yourself with it. That matters more than you realize. Now let's slow this down and rebuild understanding from the ground up. What is a warning? A warning is not an attack. It is not an accusation. It is information delivered before damage becomes permanent. It is a signal that something ahead requires attention. It is proof that there is still time, and time is mercy. Think about a simple example. Imagine you are driving at night and someone ahead flashes their headlights. You may not immediately know why, but eventually you realize there is construction ahead, or an accident, or something that requires you to slow down. The flashing light was not an insult. It was assistance. It did not accuse you of driving badly. It alerted you to what you could not yet see. God operates like that. He sees further down the road than you do. From your position, you see the next few steps. From his perspective, he sees the entire path. The bends, the cliffs, the opportunities, the traps, the timing. You see moments, he sees momentum. So when there is a stirring in your spirit, when something feels unsettled, when peace disappears around a certain decision, that is not random anxiety. That may be divine headlights flashing. But here is where many people misunderstand. We often interpret warning as disappointment. We think, if God is correcting me, he must be frustrated with me. That is not how love works. If a parent sees a child about to touch a hot stove, they do not remain silent to avoid appearing controlling. They speak quickly. They intervene firmly, not because they reject the child, but because they value the child. Silence in that moment would be neglect. Correction is not rejection. Correction is evidence of investment. When someone believes you have no future, they stop correcting you. They stop guiding you. They stop caring. Indifference is far more dangerous than discipline. The fact that you feel conviction, means you are still deeply connected. Let's define something clearly. Conviction is different from shame. Shame attacks who you are. Conviction addresses what you are doing. Shame says, you are worthless. Conviction says, this choice is not aligned with who you are becoming. One crushes identity, the other protects it. If you feel invited to adjust rather than condemned to collapse, that is not the voice of destruction. That is the voice of refinement. And refinement is uncomfortable. We grow attached to routines, even unhealthy ones. We form habits around coping mechanisms. We justify small compromises because they appear harmless. But rarely does destiny unravel through one dramatic decision. More often, it erodes through subtle repetition. A small dishonesty, a quiet resentment, a pattern of procrastination, a relationship you know drains you, a habit you keep postponing addressing. None of them explode overnight. They slowly redirect your trajectory. If you adjust a plane's course by only 1 degree, at first it looks insignificant. But over long distance, that single degree determines a completely different destination. God cares about degrees because he sees distance. That is why the warning may feel small. It may not be dramatic. It may simply be a persistent inner check, a discomfort that will not leave, a sense that something is slightly misaligned. Small adjustments now prevent major collapses later. And here is a powerful truth: the greater the calling, the finer the calibration. Imagine constructing a skyscraper. At ground level, a slight measurement error may not look serious. But 20 floors up, that error multiplies. Engineers obsess over precision early because height amplifies flaws. If your future influence is significant, alignment must be precise. That is not pressure. That is preparation. You are not being micromanaged. You are being fine-tuned. Let's talk about resistance. When warning comes, pride often rises first. Pride says, I know what I'm doing. Pride resists interruption. Pride equates adjustment with weakness. But humility understands something deeper. Limited perspective is part of being human. Humility does not mean thinking less of yourself. It means acknowledging that you do not see everything. And that acknowledgement opens the door for grace. When you respond to correction with openness instead of defensiveness, you access empowerment. Change becomes possible. Growth accelerates. Now consider something important. If God stopped nudging you, stopped stirring you, stopped correcting you, that would be frightening. Guidance is evidence of relationship. You are not abandoned. You are being directed. Sometimes warnings appear at the edge of transition. Before expansion, there is exposure. Before elevation, there is examination. Before new doors open, old patterns must close. Think about athletes training for championship-level competition. Their coach becomes more detailed, not less. Movements are analyzed. Form is corrected. Diet is adjusted. Rest is scheduled carefully. Why? Because the margin for error decreases as the level increases. If you are sensing increased correction in your life, it may not mean you are failing. It may mean you are leveling up, and leveling up requires discipline. Here is another angle to consider. Not every closed door is rejection. Some are protection. You may have prayed for something intensely, a relationship, an opportunity, a breakthrough. And when it did not unfold the way you expected, you felt confused. But what if delay was preservation? Even good opportunities at the wrong time create chaos. Timing is part of wisdom. Ripened fruit nourishes. Unripe fruit frustrates. God is not only concerned with what you receive, He is concerned with when you receive it. Now let's address fear. Some of you hear the word warning and immediately feel anxiety. But fear is not the goal. Hope is. A warning means the story is still being written. It means you can adjust the next chapter. Hopelessness says, it's too late. Guidance says, there is still time. You are not trapped. You are being redirected. That alone should release relief inside you. And here is something even deeper. The enemy tempts impulsively. God guides, patient rushes you. It pressures quick decisions. It thrives in haste. Warning slows you down. It invites reflection. It asks you to reconsider. Impulsivity reacts. Wisdom responds. Reflection produces clarity. Clarity produces alignment. Alignment produces sustainable acceleration. Acceleration without alignment eventually leads to collapse. So if your life feels slower in certain areas right now, ask yourself, is this stagnation or stabilization? Stabilization strengthens foundations, and foundations determine longevity. You are not being restricted. You are being preserved. There is a difference. Restriction feels like loss. Preservation feels like protection. If something is being removed from your life, it may not be punishment. It may be preparation for something that cannot coexist with what you were holding on to. Let's bring this back to identity. You are chosen, not because you are flawless, but because you are intentional. Your existence is not random. Your gifts are not accidental. Your sensitivity to conviction is not weakness. It is awareness. And awareness is a gift. Selection requires training. Training requires correction. Correction refines character. Character sustains destiny. So instead of asking, why am I being corrected? Consider asking, what level am I being prepared for? This moment is not about guilt. It is about growth. Not about condemnation. About calibration. Not about shame. About strengthening. Heaven does not issue warnings to destroy you. Heaven warns to defend what is valuable. And you are valuable. So if you feel the nudge, listen. If you sense the misalignment, adjust. If you recognize the pattern, confront it. Because love is moving on your behalf. And love in motion does not stay silent. This is only the beginning of what you need to understand. Now let's go deeper. If a warning is an act of love, then the next question becomes, what exactly is God protecting you from? Sometimes we assume the danger is external. We imagine opposition, enemies, visible obstacles. And yes, sometimes protection does involve shielding you from what is outside of you. But often, the greater danger is internal misalignment. Not because you are evil, not because you are incapable, but because you are human. There are patterns we inherit, habits we normalize, and thought processes we never question. Over time, those internal patterns quietly shape our decisions. And decisions, repeated consistently, create direction. Direction determines destination. So when heaven begins to warn you, it may not always be about a dramatic event. It may be about your thinking, your motives, your emotional responses, your attachments, your pace. Let's talk about pace. Some of you are moving too fast. Not because you are ambitious, ambition can be healthy, but because you are trying to outrun discomfort. You are filling every moment with activity, so you do not have to sit with reflection. You chase opportunity after opportunity without asking whether it aligns with who you are becoming. Busyness can disguise avoidance. A warning sometimes comes as exhaustion. as a sense that you are running but not arriving, as a persistent whisper that says, "Slow down." Slowing down is not falling behind. It is regaining clarity. When you drive through heavy fog, you do not accelerate. You reduce speed so you can see more clearly. The fog is not the enemy. It is a signal to adjust your pace. And some of you are in fog right now. Decisions feel unclear. Emotions feel layered. You sense transition but cannot define it. That is not a sign of failure. It is a moment that requires patience. Now let's talk about relationships. One of the most common areas where warnings appear is in the company you keep. Not everyone assigned to a season is assigned to your future. Some people walk with you for a chapter, not the whole book. But attachment can blur discernment. We confuse familiarity with destiny. We confuse history with alignment. We hold on because we have invested time, energy, emotion. Yet sometimes the warning comes as unease, as repeated conflict, as subtle compromise of your values, as a quiet diminishing of your confidence. Pay attention to what drains you consistently. If being around someone requires you to shrink your integrity, silence your growth, or constantly defend your peace, that discomfort may not be random. It may be revelation. God does not always remove people immediately. Often, He reveals truth gradually so you can respond wisely instead of react emotionally. Discernment grows through observation. Now let's examine compromise. Rarely does collapse happen overnight. It begins with justification. It's not that serious. Just this once. No one will notice. I deserve this. Those small rationalizations accumulate, and over time, they weaken discipline. Think about erosion. A rock does not crumble because of one wave. It changes shape because of constant subtle pressure. Compromise works the same way. That is why warnings sometimes feel repetitive. You sense the same conviction again and again in a specific area. Not because God is impatient, but because He knows repetition forms habit, and habit forms character. Character is what carries you when emotion fades. And here is something important: your future influence depends more on character than charisma. Charisma may open doors. Character keeps them open. If influence expands faster than integrity, exposure follows. So when you feel correction in hidden areas of your life, your thoughts, your private habits, your unspoken motives, do not interpret it as attack. Interpret it as reinforcement of your foundation. God builds from the inside out. Now let's discuss ambition and calling. There is a difference between chasing visibility and fulfilling purpose. Visibility is about being seen. Purpose is about being aligned. You can gain attention and still lose direction. Some warnings come when your desire for recognition begins to outweigh your desire for growth. When you prioritize platform over preparation. When you crave applause more than transformation. It is not wrong to desire impact. But impact without maturity creates pressure you are not ready to sustain. Before Joseph stood in the palace, he learned integrity in isolation. Before David led publicly, he developed courage privately. Isolation is not abandonment. It is incubation. If you feel hidden right now, do not assume you are forgotten. Hidden seasons often protect developing strength. Let's talk about emotional triggers. Sometimes God warns you through your reactions. If a small comment triggers disproportionate anger, if a minor inconvenience creates deep frustration, if correction immediately feels like humiliation, those reactions reveal areas that need healing. God is not only shaping your circumstances, He is shaping your responses. Because influence magnifies everything. If you carry unresolved wounds into higher responsibility, those wounds will eventually surface under pressure. Pressure does not create flaws. It exposes them. So if you are feeling pressure lately, ask yourself what is being revealed. Revelation is an invitation to heal. Now let's address something uncomfortable: pride disguised as independence. Independence can be strength. But when it shifts into isolation, it becomes vulnerability. Some of you resist accountability. You prefer to make decisions without counsel. You equate guidance with control, but wisdom invites perspective. When you isolate yourself from correction, you narrow your growth. God often speaks through people, mentors, friends, unexpected conversations. If multiple trusted voices highlight the same concern, do not dismiss it quickly. Patterns of confirmation matter, and humility is what allows you to receive them. Now let's go even deeper into motive. You can do the right thing for the wrong reason. You can serve to be admired. You can give to be validated. You can help to feel superior. You can work hard to prove your worth. Outward action may look righteous, but inward motive determines spiritual health. Sometimes the warning is not about what you are doing, but why you are doing it. God is more interested in the condition of your heart than the image of your performance. Performance impresses people. Purity pleases God, and purity requires honesty. Honesty with yourself first. Why did that decision feel necessary? Why does that opportunity excite you? Why does that criticism hurt so deeply? Self-examination is not self-condemnation. It is self-awareness. And awareness is empowerment. Now let's talk about delay. Many warnings come disguised as delay. A door that almost opened but didn't. A plan that nearly succeeded but stalled. An opportunity that felt perfect but dissolved. Your first reaction may be disappointment, but consider another possibility: redirection. You only see what you lost. God sees what you avoided. There are opportunities that look promising, but would entangle you in stress, compromise, or distraction. There are relationships that feel exciting, but would weaken your focus. There are environments that appear beneficial, but would slowly erode your values. Delay is sometimes defense. Defense of your peace. Defense of your integrity. Defense of your long-term calling. And peace matters more than speed. Now let's address comparison. Comparison quietly sabotages alignment. When you measure your progress against others, you distort your perception of timing. You begin rushing processes that require patience. You question seasons that were specifically designed for you. A warning may come when envy begins to influence your decisions. When you start pursuing things simply because someone else has them. Your path is unique. What works for someone else may not be sustainable for you. Alignment requires authenticity, and authenticity requires courage. The courage to walk at a pace that may not impress everyone. Now here is a powerful truth: warning is evidence of potential. You do not guard something that has no value. You do not protect something that has no future. If heaven is refining you, it is because your future matters. If you were insignificant, you would not face resistance. You would not sense alignment adjustments. You would drift unnoticed. But you are not drifting. You are being directed, and direction requires sensitivity. So sharpen your awareness. Notice repeated themes. Notice consistent convictions. Notice patterns of unrest. God does not always shout. Often he repeats gently until you respond. And here is the beautiful part. Response changes trajectory immediately. The moment you adjust, the moment you choose alignment, the moment you release what no longer fits, momentum shifts. Heaven partners with obedience. Not perfection, obedience. You do not have to have everything figured out. You simply have to respond to what has been revealed. And right now, something has been revealed to you. It may be small, it may be subtle, it may be uncomfortable, but it is merciful. Because it means you are not alone, you are not abandoned, you are not ignored. You are being prepared, and preparation is proof that something greater is ahead. Now we arrive at something even more intense. There is a difference between being warned and being tested. A warning invites adjustment. A test reveals transformation. And some of you have already adjusted, yet you still feel pressure. You responded to the conviction. You stepped back from what felt misaligned. You slowed your pace. You released certain attachments. You prayed. You reflected. But instead of immediate relief, you encountered resistance. That is where many people become confused. They assume that obedience should instantly remove difficulty. But often, obedience introduces refinement at a deeper level. Because once you choose alignment, heaven begins strengthening you for what that alignment unlocks. Let's talk about wilderness seasons. A wilderness is not punishment. It is transition without familiar comfort. It is the space between where you were and where you are going. It is where old identities fall away and new clarity forms. It is quiet enough for your internal world to become louder. In the wilderness, distractions decrease. And when distractions decrease, you hear yourself more clearly. That can feel uncomfortable. Some of you are in that space right now. Certain doors have closed. Certain relationships have shifted. Certain routines no longer satisfy you. You feel detached from your previous normal, but not yet fully established in your next season. That in-between space feels unstable. But instability is not the same as insecurity. God often dismantles what is familiar before he establishes what is permanent. If your old coping mechanisms no longer work, that is growth. If your old conversations feel shallow, that is maturity. If your old environments feel limiting, that is elevation beginning. Growth feels lonely before it feels powerful. Now let's go deeper into resistance. Once you decide to align your life intentionally, you may notice opposition increase. Not because you made the wrong decision, but because direction makes you a threat to stagnation. There are forces that benefit from your distraction. There are patterns that survive through your passivity. There are environments that remain comfortable when you remain small. So when you choose discipline over impulse, clarity over confusion, purpose over pressure, resistance often responds. But resistance is not proof of failure. It is confirmation of movement. If you were not progressing, there would be nothing to oppose. Think about physical training. When you begin strengthening your body, soreness follows. Not because your muscles are being damaged beyond repair, but because they are adapting to increased demand. Adaptation requires tension. And some of you are feeling tension right now, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Tension is not always a sign to quit. Sometimes it is a sign you are expanding. Let's talk about identity shifts. The most difficult battles are rarely external. They are internal confrontations between who you were and who you are becoming. Your old identity is familiar. It knows how to respond. It knows how to cope. It knows how to survive. But your new identity requires new standards. New standards require boundaries. Boundaries require courage. Courage requires conviction. And conviction grows through repetition. You may feel like you are constantly choosing discipline, constantly choosing patience, constantly choosing restraint. That repetition is not pointless. It is reinforcing who you are becoming. Every time you respond differently than you used to, you are rewriting your internal script. That is transformation. Now let's address doubt. Doubt often surfaces during transition. Not necessarily doubt in God, but doubt in yourself. Am I really capable of this level? Can I sustain this change? What if I fall back into old patterns? Doubt is loudest when you step beyond your comfort zone. But doubt is not prophecy. It is simply a voice competing with conviction. The question is, which voice are you feeding? If you constantly rehearse your past failures, doubt strengthens. If you rehearse your growth, conviction strengthens. You must become intentional about what you meditate on. Your mind is soil. Whatever thoughts you repeatedly plant will eventually grow. Now let's talk about hidden battles. Some of the greatest transformations happen where no one can see. Private decisions, private prayers, private sacrifices, private restraint. There are moments when you could react, but you choose silence. Moments when you could retaliate, but you choose integrity. Moments when you could indulge, but you choose discipline. No applause, no recognition, no validation. Just you and your conscience. Those moments matter more than public milestones. Because public success without private strength collapses under pressure. God builds you in secret so you can stand in public. If you feel unseen right now, remember this: development does not require an audience. Seeds grow underground before anyone notices the surface change. Now here is something powerful. The enemy attacks identity before assignment. If you can be convinced that you are unworthy, unprepared, or incapable, you will sabotage your own progress before stepping into your next level. So thoughts may come that question your value. You're not ready. You're not spiritual enough. You're not disciplined enough. You'll fail eventually. But look at the evidence. You are still here. You are still listening. You are still seeking alignment. You are still responding to correction. That is not the behavior of someone abandoned. That is the posture of someone becoming. Becoming is uncomfortable because it requires letting go of certainty. Certainty feels safe. Growth feels risky. But stagnation is far more dangerous than growth. Now let's discuss emotional purification. When God prepares you for higher levels of influence, He refines your emotional stability. Because leadership without emotional control becomes destructive. If anger controls you now, it will control you later, but with greater consequences. If insecurity controls you now, it will distort your decisions later, but on a larger scale. So refinement may look like delayed responses, situations that test your patience, conversations that challenge your humility. You are not being provoked randomly. You are being strengthened intentionally. And strength is not loud. It is stable. Now let's address fatigue. Growth is exhausting. Let's be honest about that. Constant self-evaluation. Constant adjustment. Constant intentionality. It requires energy. You may feel tired, not physically alone, but mentally. Tired of resisting temptation. tired of explaining your boundaries, tired of being misunderstood, tired of choosing the harder path. But fatigue does not mean you should return to what almost destroyed you. Sometimes rest is required, but regression is not. Rest restores strength. Regression revives weakness. There is a difference. Now here is the culmination of this stage. The warning led to adjustment. The adjustment led to testing. The testing is producing endurance. And endurance produces confidence. Confidence not rooted in ego, but in evidence. Evidence that you can obey. Evidence that you can change. Evidence that you can grow. Evidence that you can withstand pressure. That confidence becomes spiritual authority. Not the authority to control others, but the authority to govern yourself. Self-governance is the foundation of influence. If you can master your impulses, your reactions, your motives, you can handle expansion. Expansion without mastery collapses. So if you are in a season where it feels like everything is testing you, understand this: you are being proven trustworthy with more. Trust is earned through consistency. Consistency is built through discipline. Discipline is sustained through vision. And vision is clarified through intimacy with God. Stay close. Do not drift now. Because you are closer than you realize. The discomfort you feel is not the end. It is the final shaping before breakthrough. And breakthrough does not belong to the distracted. It belongs to the disciplined. You are being shaped for something greater. And the shaping is almost complete. Now we enter the part most people never talk about. After the warning, after the adjustment, after the testing, there comes a moment of unveiling. Not public unveiling first, internal unveiling. A clarity that settles in your spirit. A calm that wasn't there before. A quiet confidence that does not need validation. You begin to recognize that you are no longer who you were at the beginning of this process, and that realization is powerful. Because transformation rarely announces itself loudly. It reveals itself subtly in how you respond, how you decide, how you endure. Think back to who you were before this refinement began. You reacted faster. You worried more. You sought approval more intensely. You hesitated longer when conviction came. Now something is different. You pause before reacting. You weigh decisions more carefully. You feel less shaken by opinions. You recover from disappointment faster. That is evidence. You may not feel dramatically different, but growth often feels ordinary while it is extraordinary. Now let's talk about elevation. Elevation is not simply promotion. It is increased responsibility. Many people pray for elevation but underestimate what it requires. Elevation demands stability. It demands emotional maturity. It demands spiritual grounding. Because when influence increases, exposure increases. Your words carry more weight. Your decisions affect more people. Your mistakes ripple further. So before elevation becomes visible, stability must become internal. And that is what this entire process has been building. Let's examine something critical as stewardship. What you are asking God for next will require you to manage what you already have well. Peace, discipline, integrity, discernment. If you cannot steward a small platform, you will not sustain a larger one. If you cannot manage small temptations, you will not withstand larger ones. If you cannot remain humble in private, you will not remain grounded in public. Stewardship proves readiness. Now here is where many miss it. Breakthrough does not always feel explosive. Sometimes it feels quiet. It feels like peace replacing anxiety. It feels like clarity replacing confusion. It feels like consistency replacing chaos. You may be waiting for fireworks, but heaven often works through foundations. Let's talk about spiritual authority. Authority is not loud. It does not need to announce itself. It is recognized by its steadiness. When you have walked through warning, responded to correction, endured testing, and maintained obedience, something changes in your presence. You are less easily manipulated, less easily provoked, less easily distracted. That is authority. Authority over your impulses, authority over your emotions, authority over your focus. And that kind of authority shifts atmospheres. Now consider this. The very areas that once tempted you are losing their grip. What used to feel irresistible now feels optional. What used to trigger you instantly now barely moves you. What used to intimidate you now seems manageable. That is not coincidence. That is strengthening. And strengthening prepares you for expansion. Let's talk about expansion carefully. Expansion is not about visibility alone. It can show up as opportunity, influence, resources, connections, creativity, favor. But expansion without alignment leads to collapse. So before expansion becomes external, alignment must be internalized. Ask yourself honestly, if the doors opened tomorrow, would your character support the weight? If the influence multiplied instantly, would your humility sustain it? If the resources increased, would your discipline manage them wisely? These are not questions meant to intimidate you. They are questions meant to awaken you. Because readiness determines longevity. Now here is something even deeper. The warning you received at the beginning of this journey was not only about preventing loss, it was about protecting increase. There are blessings that require clean hands and steady hearts. Not perfection, but integrity. Integrity is consistency between what you believe and how you behave. When integrity solidifies, confidence becomes natural. You no longer perform righteousness. You embody alignment. That embodiment changes how you walk into rooms. It changes how you speak. It changes how you listen. People may not even know why they trust you more, but they feel it. Because refined character carries weight. Now let's address something subtle: fear of success. Sometimes after long refinement, a hidden fear surfaces. What if this actually works? What if I really step into this? What if I am seen? Success exposes you to responsibility. Responsibility requires courage. You may have grown comfortable in preparation mode. Preparation feels safe because it is private. Execution feels vulnerable because it is visible. But you were not refined to remain hidden forever. You were stabilized to be released. Release does not mean recklessness. It means readiness. And readiness feels like peace under pressure. Now consider timing. Divine timing rarely aligns with human impatience. You may feel ready before the door opens. Or the door may open before you feel fully ready. But here is the key: obedience positions you correctly. Your job is alignment. God's job is orchestration. Do not confuse delay with denial. Sometimes orchestration requires moving pieces you cannot see. While you are refining your character, God may be arranging connections. While you are strengthening discipline, God may be preparing opportunities. While you are stabilizing emotionally, God may be clearing environments. You are not waiting idly. You are being synchronized. Synchronization requires trust, and trust deepens through experience. Look at what you have already survived. The doubt, the correction, the isolation, the testing, the fatigue. And yet you did not abandon your pursuit of alignment. That persistence is proof of calling. Now we approach culmination. You are no longer at the beginning. You are not where you were when the warning first came. Something has solidified inside you. You are less reactive, more observant, more intentional, more discerning. That internal shift is the true breakthrough. External results will follow. Because when the foundation is stable, construction accelerates safely. Let's speak plainly. The season of constant correction is transitioning into a season of confirmation. You will begin to notice small affirmations, opportunities aligning unexpectedly, conversations confirming what you sensed privately, doors opening with less resistance, favor appearing in subtle but undeniable ways. Do not overlook small confirmations. They are signals that alignment is bearing fruit. And here is the final truth of this stage. You were not warned to be limited. You were warned to be launched. Protection preceded promotion. Refinement preceded release. Stability preceded expansion. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You were being fortified. And now fortified people move differently. They do not rush. They do not panic. They do not crumble under pressure. They stand steady because they know who prepared them. The unveiling has already begun, first within you. The external unveiling is closer than you think. Now we arrive at the final stage. Not the end of your journey, but the completion of this cycle. Because every divine process moves in patterns. Warning, adjustment, testing, stability, release, and now manifestation. But manifestation is often misunderstood. It is not just about receiving something new. It is about walking in what you have already become. By the time the door opens, the real miracle has already happened inside you. Let's slow this down. When the warning first came, it felt disruptive. It interrupted comfort. It challenged habits. It confronted attachments. You may have resisted it at first, but you listened. Then came adjustment. You stepped back. You reevaluated. You realigned. You let go of certain distractions. You strengthened discipline. You quieted noise. Then came testing. Pressure intensified. Doubt surfaced. Old patterns tried to return. Fatigue set in. You wondered if it was worth it, but you endured. Then stability formed. Your reactions changed. Your peace deepened. Your discernment sharpened. You were no longer easily shaken. And now, you are ready to walk differently. Manifestation does not announce itself with noise. It begins with movement. You will notice yourself making decisions with unusual clarity. You will say no without guilt. You will say yes without fear. You will move without overthinking every step. That is confidence rooted in refinement. Now here is something important. When release begins, distractions often attempt a final return. Opportunities that would have tempted you before may reappear. Old connections may resurface. Familiar shortcuts may present themselves again. This is not coincidence. It is confirmation. When something loses control over you, it often makes one final attempt to regain it. But now you recognize it. And recognition is power. You are no longer fighting blindly. You see clearly. Clarity is one of the greatest signs of spiritual maturity. Let's talk about acceleration. After long seasons of slow growth, things can begin moving quickly. Doors that were once shut begin opening in succession. Conversations lead to unexpected connections. Ideas gain momentum. favor increases. Acceleration can feel overwhelming if you are not grounded. But you are grounded now, because your identity is no longer attached to outcomes. It is anchored in alignment. This changes everything. You are no longer chasing validation. You are stewarding responsibility. Now consider influence. Influence expands naturally when stability is evident. People trust consistency. They are drawn to calm confidence. They respond to integrity. You will not have to force recognition. It will find you. But here is the warning within manifestation: stay humble. Elevation tests humility differently than obscurity does. In obscurity, you fight discouragement. In elevation, you fight pride. Both require awareness. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is remembering who strengthened you, the discipline you built, the character you refined, the endurance you developed. None of it was accidental. Now let's talk about vision. Your vision will expand in this season. What once felt distant will begin to feel reachable. What once seemed impossible will begin to feel structured. Ideas will organize themselves. Strategies will become clearer. This is not imagination. It is readiness meeting opportunity. But with vision comes responsibility to execute. You cannot stay in reflection mode forever. At some point, movement must follow preparation. And this is where courage becomes essential. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite it. Even after refinement, you may still feel moments of hesitation. That is human. But hesitation no longer controls you. You move anyway. Now here is something deeper. Your peace will become your compass. Before, you may have made decisions based on pressure, urgency, comparison, or emotion. Now you will notice something different. When something is aligned, it will feel steady, even if it is challenging. When something is misaligned, it will feel restless, even if it looks attractive. Peace does not mean easy. It means grounded. Trust that. Let's address legacy. This process was never just about you. The stability you developed will impact others. Your discipline will influence people watching quietly. Your boundaries will model strength. Your humility will disarm insecurity in others. You may never fully know how many people are affected by your obedience. But impact multiplies when integrity is consistent. Now consider cycles. You have completed one cycle of refinement. That does not mean challenges will disappear forever. It means you now understand the pattern. Next time warning comes, you will recognize it faster. Next time testing arrives, you will endure it stronger. Next time elevation begins, you will steward it wiser. Experience builds discernment. Discernment shortens confusion, and wisdom accelerates growth. Now let's bring this to culmination. The greatest evidence of manifestation is not external success. It is internal authority. You govern your thoughts. You govern your reactions. You govern your motives. You are no longer led by impulse. You are led by conviction. That shift changes your trajectory permanently. And here is the final truth. You were never being restricted. You were being redirected. You were never being delayed. You were being developed. You were never being denied. You were being prepared. Prepared for weight. Prepared for influence. Prepared for expansion. And now, as doors begin to open, you will walk through them differently than you would have before. With gratitude instead of entitlement. With confidence instead of insecurity. With discernment instead of naivety. With peace instead of pressure. This is manifestation, Not chaos, not noise, not reckless acceleration, but steady, undeniable progress. The warning protected you. The testing strengthened you. The refinement stabilized you. The release positioned you. And now the path ahead is clear. Walk it boldly. Walk it humbly. Walk it consistently. Because what is ahead of you is not accidental. It is the result of everything you chose when no one was watching. And that is why it will last.